My mother and brothers came to my graduation in 1940. In the summer of that year, I decided to apply to the Rhode Island Hospital School of Nursing to train to become a nurse. I looked after Mother for a while when she was sick, and I found that I enjoyed it. The year before, after Father died, I drove Mother to Elyria, Ohio, to visit Father's sister, Ophi, and his sister Mary's family, the Fays. On the way home, we stopped at Niagara Falls to view the sights. Nursing training at Rhode Island Hospital consisted of 6 months of probation, followed by 2.5 more years of classes and hospital duty. We had 3 affiliations, 2 months each: OB/GYN at Providence Lying-In Hospital, contagious disease at Charles B. Chapin Hospital, and a choice of either district nursing or mental health at Butler Hospital. I chose district nursing with the Providence Visiting Nursing Association. During my last year of training, while I was at the Lying-In Hospital, I met a medical student named Freddie McCready. We dated a few times, and I really thought I was in love for the first time. I even took him home to Norton to meet Mother. He was transferred to Worcester City Hospital and couldn't get to Providence very often. In the meantime, a new group of interns arrived at the Rhode Island Hospital when I returned from the Lying-In, and among them was a man named Ernest Smith. I met him on the hospital ward, and he told me that his classmate at Tufts had told him about me. He even called me Mrs. McCready. I started going out with Ernie and ended up inviting him to our senior dance, a very elegant affair at the fancy hotel in Providence. I had invited Fred McCready because I had not heard from him, I asked Ernie. Freddie accepted the last minute, but I had to tell him I had asked someone else. Ernie and I dated whenever we had time off. But he became very possessive, spying on me, writing me notes all the time. I decided to break things off because I wasn't ready to seriously get involved with anyone. I started going out with other men, but I realized that none were as good company as Ernie. One day, when I was in Central Supply Room at the hospital, I bumped into Ernie, and he asked me again. He had asked me before if I would go to the Dartmouth-Harvard football game with him in October. I said yes. In September 1943, I graduated from the Rhode Island Hospital School of Nursing and then took my state board exams. Ernie helped me a lot while studying for them. We would go to Roger Williams Park, take a picnic in a blanket, and spend the day there. Once I had my RN, I worked at the hospital for a while, and then a group of us went to Boston to enlist in the armed services. There were recruiters coming to the hospital every week telling us of the dire need for nurses to help with the care for the soldiers. This was the fall of 1943. The Harvard-Dartmouth football game was on the second Saturday of October. I was working on night duty at the time, and as soon as I got off duty at 7 a.m., I dressed and packed a suitcase and met Ernie to catch a train to Boston. We got to the Harvard Stadium in time to meet Ernie's friends before the game. In the evening, we went to a married couple's home in Melrose for a buffet supper, and then took a train to Ernie's home in Ipswich. Ernie's mother and sister Charlotte were waiting up for us. I liked them both very much. Ernie kept asking me to marry him. He wanted to give me a diamond ring for Christmas, but I said that I wanted to join the armed services. Finally, I got my orders to report to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, on December 13, 1943. 3 of us from the Rhode Island Hospital received the same orders. Air, Massachusetts was west of Boston, a 3/4-hour train ride away. Ernie would take a train from Providence into Boston, and we would meet, either for the day or if I had a weekend off, we'd go to Ipswich or to Norton. He still wanted me to give me a ring, and I finally agreed to it for my birthday in February. Then during the first week in March 1944, we got word that we would be leaving for overseas within 2 weeks. I told Ernie, and he begged me to marry him before I left. I couldn't do anything at the Army base, so I left everything up to him. He tried to get his parish priest to marry us, but he wouldn't without first posting the 3-week spans of marriage. Ernie still wanted to get married, so I called Mother to see if our minister could do it in Norton. She made all the arrangements while Ernie had to go to Ipswich to get his marriage license, come to Ayr to get my blood test, take it to Norton to get my marriage license, all on Wednesday. Then on Thursday, March 9th, on the 9th of March, he met us in Boston at 2 p.m. I had to work all morning, hurried up and packed, and caught a train to Boston. My best friend, Alistair Marsden, who was at Devon's with me, came too to be my maid of honor. We took a train to Attleboro, where we were met and driven to Norton. Mother had decorated the house, invited relatives, and made refreshments and a wedding cake. The minister from the Congregational Church in Norton conducted the ceremony. We borrowed Mother's car for our honeymoon, 3 days at the Sheraton Hotel in Boston. I had to be back at the base at Fort Devens by 10 p.m. on Sunday night, not giving us much time together. We thought it would be the last time we would ever see each other until the end of the war. Ernie had received my APO number, yet 2 weeks later, while we were at Camp Edwards on the Cape, we were told that we were given a 24-hour pass and that a bus was leaving at 3 a.m. for Providence. I tried to call Ernie, but he was working nights at the shipyard at the time. When we got to Providence at 6:30 a.m., I called him at Peter's house, the dorm for the interns, and he took a cab to the train station to get me. We had a wonderful day together, the last time we would see each other for almost 2 years. The following day at Camp Edwards, we were very busy getting ready for our trip overseas. Everything was top secret. We left camp after dark, and we arrived at our port of embarkation to board at midnight. There were only 4 of us assigned to our cabin, which wasn't too crowded, giving us enough room for all our cosmetics and toilet articles. The following morning, I could feel the ship moving, and on going up on deck, I was just amazed to see the huge convoy of ships that we were a part of, ships in every direction as far as the eye could see. Our ship was a former Dutch luxury liner, and all the crew spoke Dutch. Our meals were seated twice a day at 6, 7, 8, or 9 a.m., or 5, 6, 7, or 8 p.m. Each of us was given a meal ticket. We could always take fruit or rolls to our cabins in between meals. It was very rough going overseas. Many of the passengers became seasick, so the nurses were recruited to infirmary for duty. Even the captain became sick and had to be given intravenous fluids. One night while we were in bed, we heard a loud crash, and we were thrown out of our beds onto the floor, and all our cosmetics went flying. The general alarm was sounding, so we all quickly got some clothes on and put on our life jackets and joined the others lining up to go on deck. Luckily, we didn't have to abandon ship. We found out later that we'd probably bumped into another ship in the convoy, although we were told that a huge wave had hit us. I played a lot of chess on the way over to pass the time. It took 2 weeks to reach England. We disembarked at Liverpool, where we boarded a train for a village in Wales. There we were billeted in private homes, 2 together. Dimash and I shared a bedroom and a bathroom in one of these homes. It was very cold and damp there in April. We put hot water from the kettle into our heated on the stove in our canteens to warm the bed at night. Each morning we had to report in full uniform at our headquarters for a drill or exercise or instructions. We had our meals there also. Then we were usually free all afternoon to go sightseeing, to shop, to visit castles, or to stop in at a tea room. We had to wait for our hospital to become evacuated by another unit. We spent about a month in Wales, and then finally it came time for us to set up our hospital, the 184th General, in a village called Mansfield near Nottingham. It was a very nice compound made up of one-story brick buildings for the offices, Quonset huts for the wards, and large tents in back of the Quonset huts for ambulatory patients. Our nurses' quarters were great, brick buildings with bathtubs and hot water. We each had our own room, and we had a living room with a radio. There was an officers' club nearby, which had a large dance floor. Much to our disappointment, our first patients were German prisoners. It was a routine to assign them to different hospitals every month or two to prevent fraternization and also to prevent the staff from getting too depressed over the circumstances. I was head nurse and was assigned a German prisoner who could speak English very well to be my interpreter. His name was Wenko. I would tell him what I wanted the patients to do, and he would repeat it in German. When the work was done, I would ask him to get the patients to sing Lily Marlene for me. They sang together beautifully. They were very polite, yet afraid and lonely, not too different from our own soldiers. When our American patients started coming, we became very busy. When a trainload of patients arrived, we all had to work 12 to 16-hour shifts. This was especially true after the invasion and during the Battle of the Bulge. The boys had just been roughly patched up at the station hospitals, and then we had to either prepare them for further surgery or to stabilize them for shipment to the States. My ward was a colostomy ward. Most of the patients had severe abdominal wounds, often requiring a colostomy. The sickest patients were on both sides of an open ward nearest the nurses' station. There were always patients needing pre-op preparations and then post-op IVs and monitoring. We never seemed to have enough help. Good corpsmen were worth their weight in gold. I had about 50 patients on the ward and about the same number of ambulatory patients housed in a tent in back of the Quonset hut. I was also responsible for medications and the medical charts for all these patients. In the Army, any paperwork had to be done in triplicate. When a doctor came to see a patient, the head nurse would get the patient's chart and accompany him to see the patient. This was our training at the Rhode Hospital. However, not all nurses followed this procedure. Apparently, I made a good impression on the chief of the medical staff, Dr. John Maloney, who recommended me for promotion, so within 6 months I became a first lieutenant. John and I became good friends. He was married with a wife and twin daughters in Massachusetts and was a safe escort to walk me home from the officers' club after a dance. The soldiers would line up waiting to walk a nurse home. The letters from Ernie would arrive all at once because when he was in the Navy, he would be at sea for several days, and even though he wrote every day, they were mailed all together. It was a very worrisome time. Mother wrote that Edward had suffered a stroke and was paralyzed on one side of his body. Ernie wrote that his father had undergone a serious operation and was on the danger list at the New England Baptist Hospital. Ernie went home on emergency medical leave to be with his father, who recovered, thank God, as did Edward. I had written to my cousin Kathleen Stevenson Sherwin, whom I hadn't seen since Turkey. She was living with her parents in Worthing, England. Her husband was stationed at Malta while serving in the Royal Air Force. She invited me to go and stay with them whenever I could get away. I would have to take a train to London, change stations, and get another train for Worthing on the southwest coast. Everything seemed to be rationed in England at the time, so I packed an overnight suitcase with rationed items that I could get at the PX: candy, cigarettes, soap, even meat coupons that I exchanged for other items with the domestic workers at the camp. Aunt Jessie would love to see me come with all these gas items. She would rush to the market to buy a roast for supper. They really had to make a lot of sacrifices during the war. She insisted on serving me breakfast in bed every time I visited them. On one occasion, I invited Kathleen to accompany me to the Army PX in London. Kathleen was the same size as I was, and I could buy all the items she needed, but were rations, such as stockings, slips, underwear, nightgowns, slippers, etc.